Ready? Let's do this. Story time with Slim and Soph.
This is Slim.
3 knots on the face, skipper!
I'm Soph, the skipper. Oh, and we have a fluffy crew member too, Chili. We live aboard our 1989 Duncanson 34. She may be vintage, but her glory days are far from over. We're taking her around Australia, exploring our beautiful Aussie backyard. We put new videos out every Monday, so subscribe. Come along with us.
Hello to you. We're going to be doing something a little bit different this week and we're excited. I hope you're excited. If you're a returning subscriber, you will know that we are not on the boat at the moment due to someone having an injury.
And if you're new to the channel and you haven't yet subscribed yet, do it now before we go any further. But no, we're off the boat at the moment. We're healing some injuries. We're really missing being on the boat at the moment, so we've been going through all our old footage and we thought it'd be a really fun idea to make a little compilation video of like our hairiest and scariest moments while living aboard a sailing boat on the east coast of Australia.
So without further ado, welcome to the worst of our sailing thus far.
Number 1, our worst bar crossing.
So we thought we would kick this off with where it all started for us. This was our first ever sail together.
You will have seen this footage before of ours. There's little snippets of it in our intro. We included that because we thought it looked pretty badass, but in actual fact, we were peaking.
We were terrified.
And it was not our intentions to get such awesome footage of us crashing over waves on the Brunswick Heads Bar.
So Soph buys a boat in Brisbane and wants to bring it home to Brunswick Heads so she can work, live aboard the boat and earn some money. Soph meets one Slim at said workplace and eventually invites him to live aboard.
So at the time I moved aboard, the boat had been sitting in Bruns for about a year. The reason being is it is a very notorious bar on the east coast of Australia. It faces dead east. It's extremely shallow and the protective walls barely stretch beyond the back of the breaking waves, even in the most mildest of swells.
At this point, I was a very confident sailor. I had done a lot of miles, but the whole boat maintenance thing this far had slipped my mind. I wasn't confident with that at all. So with the boat unserviced, particularly we're talking about the engine, a very unexperienced boatman, Simon, jumps aboard and we decide we want to get out of Bruns so we can get the boat back into action and start building our team. We've chosen a day upon tide to get across the very shallow bar. We needed a very decent morning tide, very high, and in the morning. So by the time we approached our next bar up the coast, we would catch it on an incoming there. So we saw a king tide coming up that lined up to be early morning, and based on that day, it was about a month out, we quit our jobs and hoped that the swell and the wind would all align for that day too.
When that morning finally did roll around, we jumped on our pushies, rode our battered little beach pushies all the way up the bar and had a bit of a look, and there was definitely some sets, but like we thought it looked pretty achievable to cross. There was some pretty big breaks between the sets. So sort of half throwing up with our hearts in our throats, we rode back to Nakama and got her ready to push off.
So we potted very slowly up the river, pot, towards the river mouth, and it looks like by the time we've gotten there, the swell has already increased.
Significantly.
To be honest, I don't really know what we're thinking. We were just there and we just had to, we just went for it.
Next thing I know, so it's like, yeah, now! We did sit inside and we waited for a few sets to roll through and we counted how much time was in between them. I definitely don't think we had as much guts in the engine as what we expected.
But also, like, the tide was coming in.
And it was coming in, yeah.
We had the tide against us.
I knew nothing. I was so green at this point.
We were definitely questioning our decision, but at that point we were committed and we just saw a break between the sets and we just tried to charge as much as we could on an unserviced Nakama engine with the incoming tide and just went for it.
So we'd misjudged the sets and they started forming. I've surfed myself, and the feeling of like paddling, and you just make it over the wave, and then you like can't stop paddling because the next wave's coming, and you know in the back of your head like, oh, we'll get smashed if I don't really put it in now, but you're relying on something mechanical, not your own body, and the consequences were so much higher.
So after the boat breached the top of the wave and came off the back and slammed down, we were just bobbing there. We had no propulsion. Nakama's prop in the aerated whitewash was just spinning. At one point I was like, has the engine just conked out on us? At this stage, I was picturing us sprawled all over the rocks. I really deeply thought that this was it. I don't want to be dramatic here, but in that moment, I really thought
I was
that
blissfully ignorant, but you were.
I really thought that was it. I heard my mum's voice saying, you just need to keep the bow pointed straight into the wave, and that's all we could really do at that point.
The anchor came dislodged like halfway through the bar crossing.
The last place you want to set anchor is in the middle of Brunswick Heads Bar, trying to cross it with breaking waves. But alas, we made it out the other side, and the 25 knot winds that the day presented to us did nothing to ease our hearts, our adrenaline. Can we just say this is our first sail together?
Ever. About an hour after that, when the shaking had subsided and like I could feel my heart at a regular rhythm and stuff again, it was like, oh. So in 10 hours, we got to do that again.
We have to cross another bar, which actually, on that note, we got pooped coming through the Gold Coast Seaway that day as well. So, yeah.
The water in our bilges is salty. Perfect. This story went on for a bit over 2 months in the end as we sort of repeat diagnosed the problem. I think what actually happened is we probably did diagnose a few other correct things, but we never actually got the main part of the source. But the story begins at Double Island Point. We just sailed from Mooloolaba to Double Island Point to wait to cross the Wide Bay Bar. After sort of dropping anchor and securing everything, Soph was still up on the deck tightening the ropes and the sails and everything like that. So I popped down below and I just heard this weird noise under the floorboards and a little, bubbling at the sides of the bilges as we rolled in this rolling anchorage. And I was like, oh no, there's water. Of course, first question Soph asked me, I was like, I think there's water in here, babe, real tentatively. I was like, been sailing for a few weeks at this point still. I'm like, and then you're like, is it salty? And the answer was yes.
This wasn't like a scary moment, it was more just like one of those pondering like,
Where's it coming from?
I think I put it to that the bilges hadn't been emptied for a while. I think I brushed it off pretty quickly.
So
I was just sort
it.
of like, we brushed it off pretty lightly. I think we even went to the beach that day and then just bailed it out and just pondered upon it again.
Yeah.
There wasn't really much we could do at that stage, I guess. Apart from just keep an eye on it. I think we just checked all the seacocks and everything seemed dry around the seacocks, so it was sort of...
Yeah, all the seacocks were good. We couldn't find any damage anywhere. What we put it down to initially is because we were in quite big seas, is that the seal of our exhaust, which is a wet exhaust, wasn't exactly watertight, so we thought it might have been leaking back in there when Swell was riding up on Nakama's ass. That was a problem. There was a little bit of water coming in there, but minimal. So we fixed that, and I fixed another leaking system in the exhaust. But what ended up being the problem, and it took us 2 months of slowly fixing tiny little leaks to diagnose it as a broken bearing in our impeller casing of the water pump for the engine cooling system. Did I get that out right?
Yeah, there was one point there where we realised if we're sailing, we're not getting water in. If we're motoring, we're getting water in.
We figured out that we're not leaking or taking on water when the engine's not on, so there's something to do with the engine
cooling system.
I guess why this was the worst was because we were bailing the boat. We didn't have working bilge pumps. Who said that?
Still don't.
Who said that? We bailed the boat for 2 months straight.
Yeah.
The bilges are so full again.
The bilges filled up so quickly when the engine was on. Anyway.
And when we were doing bigger passages like night and we'd have to be motor sailing, we'd set an alarm for every 2 hours. And it'd be part of our watch changing duties. Like as the watch changed, whoever had the luxury of sleeping had to empty the bilges on their way up to deck. I'm just giving the bilges a quick empty. We've been motoring for basically through our watches for the last couple of hours because we've basically lost the wind as a result of the motor going to the bilges. So it's 12 o'clock at night in the middle of the ocean. We're doing this for fourth time today. Well, I don't know, you just adapt and it worked until we could make it into port and get a professional to replace the bearing. Yeah. Our first and worst nighttime entrance, featuring an encounter with a ship.
So we're off Fraser Island out with Thunder Creek, and after listening to whale songs through the hull all night, we got woken up by 2 beautiful whales right next to us blowing out. Insane.
That's the correct term for it, I think. Blowing out.
Blowing out.
Yeah, sorry.
Our plan was to take it easy, whale watch during the day as we made it up to Rooney Point, the top of Fraser Island. We had a really cool whale encounter, but during this time of getting there, the wind was increasing and building, and by the time we got to Rooney Point, it was quite awful. We were the only boat there, and that's saying something.
It's normally a pretty packed spot.
We dropped anchor, looked at the wind, and had a little discussion and thought,
Fuck this, let's get out of here.
it would be a really great sail to go to Bundaberg.
And all the conditions were perfectly to make it a shitty anchorage, but they were perfect to make it look like a really epic sail.
But we had to think about that we would be getting, as it's now 12 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's about a 40 nautical mile trip, so about 8 hours. We knew we'd be getting in at night. We had never done a night sail before or done a night entrance before. We had heard that Bundaberg was really well lit, so we felt confident to go for it.
Yeah, we thought we'd give it a go.
Bundaberg, as you may or may not know, is Australia's biggest sugar export port.
Which is where this good stuff comes from.
Anyway, we failed to make the connection that very large ships would be coming in and out of this place. We also may have failed to turn on our radio.
It's now dark and the depth has dropped, so naturally that already sizable swell has increased. We've made out the distant flashing of the channel. You can see the markers coming up, so happy about that. We start aiming towards that.
We see a boat coming towards us, and it gets closer. They don't just go past us, they now have spun around on us and are at our stern, with a man at the front of the bow screaming at us as we are both like this.
Ducking in and out of view of each other. We're just next to each other, but we're so hard
on
to see.
different waves, up and down. It's black. The wind is howling.
You can't hear.
He's screaming at us.
You can see him going, "Arr!" and I'm like,
We have no idea what he's saying. We're yelling at him. We're trying to also focus on not hitting the channel marker.
I don't know what we were thinking, but eventually somewhere in the wind we made something out that sounded along the lines of like, get out of the channel, there's a ship coming.
So we've just had a boat come up to us as we're halfway through crossing this channel, pitch black. They've spun around on us because our radio's been playing up and basically told us that we need to exit the channel as there's a ship coming out.
When you're in a channel, you assume that there's a dredge channel that's marked for a reason and it's shallow on either side. So when someone's like, he's like, get out of the channel. And I was like, what, is it deep enough? And he was just like, he just repeated, he was like, you'll be right, get out of the channel, there's a ship coming. So I think we figured we'd take our chances with the depths to not get mown down by a commercial ship.
They've told us it's going to be deep enough out here, but as soon as we pulled out of that channel, the swell that we've been battling,
We had no choice but to get the out of the channel. We've come out of the channel, we've swung into the wind, we've got the bow straight into the wind, the mainsail's pulled on tight. I'm trying to keep our nose so close into the wind so we don't catch it and lose our ground. We're now riding over these waves.
we're waiting it out outside the channel here in the dark, in the swell. Hopefully the depth doesn't drop too much and got to wait for a fucking ship to pass.
Far out. It was, and just all those ships are really fast. You're just waiting for it, like, come on, get past. And then when it finally did, the wake of the ship meeting the stuff we were on, we were just like we were still pretty close to the thing at that point in time.
So eventually the ship passed and we were safe to then turn back around and head into the channel and progress a little further. Honestly, that bit of the trip was so tiring. You could really barely make out the channel as it flashed. It was pitch black. There was wind. There was huge swell, and trying to keep us in line of that channel was exhausting.
The whole thing was f***ing exhilarating, to be honest.
Then when we arrived, because it is just a town made of sugar factories, the whole place just smelt like a giant cinnamon donut.
No, seriously, it does smell like cinnamon donuts, so that's all I'm craving right now.
And that was our first and worst nighttime ship encounter / port entrance.
Now, of course, there's heaps of other memorable moments we've had out there. These are just some of the ones, I guess, that stand out to us and where we know that we had the cameras rolling, at least partially, when it was happening. Most of the time when things go wrong for us, when they go truly wrong, we're not filming, we're trying not to die. Bit of a different one this week. Hope you enjoyed it.
Let us know in the comments below if you've had anything similar, like these things happen to you. We'd love to hear what's happened to you. Tell us some of your worst stories.
And I think the thing that happens when these things happen to you is you feel like when you're sailing, you're trying and plan anything and you're like, what could possibly, especially when you're doing maintenance, you're like, I've prepared everything, nothing could possibly go wrong, and it astounds me sometimes the things that go wrong.
How wrong things can go.
Obviously some of these ones like the bar crossing we could have probably avoided, but a lot of the time when we're being responsible and we have actually thought about stuff, things have a way of creeping up on you and making your day interesting. But I guess that's why we love it in a sense. Sort of. One of the reasons.
Woo! Alright.
Alright, anyway, yeah, we're rambling.
Lots
Bye.
of love. Goodbye. Ah!